So, Jason, just to stop you for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the Soviets needed any. The Soviets in the United States were in a Cold War, and we can go all the way back to World War II for that. I mean, I do think there was an arms race, and I do think.
But were we on the same side in World War II?
No.
Yes,
well, yes,
technically, but no. The Soviets didn't need any pushing to be aggressive toward the United States. We were both in a geopolitical, struggle.
Sure, but to get the hot war off, Brian, on that area and start, making these guys into real soldiers where they were fighting, I'm just saying that we fired first, and that's not in the narrative. That's all.
So whatever the case, I think that what I'm hearing, though, Jason, is that this was an orchestrated plan by the Bush family.
No.
In cahoots with okay. I want to get.
I mean, all I'm saying in that respect is, there's a big difference when we talk about George H.W. Bush and his sons in various degrees.
Yes,
because
big time.
But would it be safe to say, Jason, that you are not 100% sure as to what exactly happened? You're calling into question the narrative that came out. So you're more of a question raiser and saying, look, there's this mainstream narrative, but if you actually look deep enough, there's a chance there are other cooperators or at least architects in this.
Brother, I'm about to show you not only, for instance, one of the first things that I was going to show you, and we'll just show it to you here.
Jason, real quick before you bring this up, hold on. I wanted on this Bin Laden family thing. And then we'll go back to what Brian's talking about. The only people allowed to fly on 9/11 after everything goes down is who?
Well,
the Bin Laden family, right?
Well, it's members of the Saudi royal family and the Bin Laden family. I could show you that. That's everybody's seen that.
Sam, that'd be standard.
No, stop.
But let me say this.
And the reason that I bring that up is because there is a rumor that just like the JFK assassination, where there's documents released by the CIA that Daddy Bush was in Dallas that day. Okay, there are whispers and talks of a Bilderberg group, basically September 10th, having a meeting in which the guest of honor is the Bin Laden family.
Sam,
listen,
that's so far-fetched.
And not only that,
this is where
if you really wanted to get down to something that was actually a little bit more disturbing, it's that actually Old Man Bush was the one in the White House on September 10th that evening. He spent the night there and was there on the 11th, and then later in the morning, he actually went to a meeting involving was it Halliburton? It wasn't Halliburton. I don't want to misspeak. But it was one of those.
But let's stick to what you were saying, though, Jason.
Yeah.
I want to stick to this.
So all right. So the idea, and I have a large section of the film. We could go into Bojinka, where with Ramzi Youssef, where they were talking about flying planes into building. I have that clip. That's fine. All these things that they didn't know, they absolutely knew. They were warned on several occasions. In fact, when we talked about Israel, the Mossad had warned a couple of weeks before. That's also in there. And then what you're looking at right here is not some kind of.
But Jason, can I stop you for a second? Isn't it true though that when you're absolutely right? I forgot about that. Was that we had been warned? We knew that this group called Al Qaeda was a serious threat. And so if you read the several books I've read, there were entire sort of departments at the CIA dedicated to dealing with this Islamic terrorist group called Al Qaeda. So I think they got a lot of tips, but isn't a lot of this sort of hindsight.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
Look at this. This is June 1st, brother. This is June 1st and 2nd. It's not hindsight to have Osama bin Laden on your war game exercise where you are flying a commercial airliner, into what? The White House. They literally show you here, the Capitol. Okay. Hijack scenario, show you it's a commercial airliner, show you it's coming in from Alaska. They war gamed this prior. Now, on the morning.
Because Tom Clancy said I remember this conversation, and I think he said to Al Gore, and Al Gore said, well, I can tell you it's the first thing I'm bringing up, which he brought up. And so it doesn't surprise me that they were doing these war games. It makes total sense.
Yes.
Keep going.
All right. So, the other things that I was going to kind of gloss over is you're also looking, they war gamed a plane, a commercial airliner hitting the Pentagon in the months before. On the morning of 9/11, it's not just Delta 1989 that they think they have a bomb on. They think they have over 20 plus hijackings going on throughout this whole morning. And When you listen to the NORAD tapes off the bat, and it's first said that a plane has hit the World Trade Center, the first thing the guy says is this real world or exercise? Now, this is where, it kind of gets murky, but I want to play this clip because it was, quote unquote, conventional wisdom, according to Tom Brokaw, that we didn't know about these things, and that we didn't know. And this piece that was back in NBC, I want to say this is 2004, totally dominates that. And then we're going to get into the fact, Bryan, and this is very upsetting and something people don't want to deal with, is that we have this idea that these guys got in there with box cutters or weapons through their luggage, right? Or somehow on the plane. They were planted there. There was multiple reports of that. In fact, when you get into the Dark Overlord document, there's a damn good chance there was a gun on at least one of those planes. And it was there beforehand. But Time Magazine actually did a report. That'll probably be the end of this clip. Buckle up for about 8 minutes. Give me about 8 minutes, and we'll play this clip here.
Buckle up, Buttercup.
We're going to take a closer look tonight at another example of where, despite the conventional wisdom, there were people in the United States who actually were preparing to defend against the kind of attacks which occurred here on 9/11. The North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD for short, has been defending the skies over the U.S. and Canada for almost 50 years, 46 to be precise. USA Today reports that in the 2 years before the attacks on September the 11th, NORAD conducted exercises using hijacked airliners as weapons. And one target was the World Trade Center. Here's ABC's Bryan Ross.
President Bush has said again and again that no one could have imagined what Osama bin Laden ordered for September 11th.
We knew he hated us. But there was nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government, that could envision flying airplanes into buildings on such a massive scale.
But that turns out not to be true. U.S. military planners did envision and practice those very scenarios. As reported by USA Today, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, conducted exercises with fighter jets, simulating hijacked planes flown into the World Trade Center in the 2 years before the attacks. Pentagon planners also envisioned the attack on the Pentagon 5 months before it happened.
One of these drills was run on June 1st and 2nd of 2001. Amalgam Virgo was an exercise where multiple attack scenarios would be occurring simultaneously, including attacks from cruise missiles, unmanned aerial vehicles, and hijacked aircraft. The scenario also envisioned a hijacker taking control of a commercial aircraft and slamming it into the nation's capital. The exercises would constantly be monitored by military satellites and planes. Osama bin Laden was the poster boy for this plot, appearing on the cover.
Isn't it a fact, sir, that prior to September 11, 2001, NORAD had already in the works plans to simulate in an exercise a simultaneous hijacking of 2 planes in the United States?
Colonel Scott, do you have any data on that? I'm not aware of that, sir. I was not present at the time.
That was Operation Amalgam Virgo.
Yes, sir.
So what did happen on 9/11? The truth is, there was a lot more going on that day than we were being told. There were several war games and exercises being run simultaneously, involving multiple government agencies. John Fulton and a team from the CIA would be conducting a drill at 8:45 a.m. out of the National Reconnaissance Office in Chantilly, Virginia, in which a plane is crashed into a building. Other drills would literally cripple our defensive and investigative abilities on that morning.
But this very interesting information, Katie, Matt, and Tom, from the FBI, they have been operating a massive exercise from their hostage rescue unit. All of their top teams, about 50 personnel, helicopters, equipment, were in Monterey, California for the last 2 days, scheduled to fly back today commercially. So all of those people are out of place. It's fair to say, according to sources that we've talked to here at NBC, that the FBI rescue operations and other FBI operations are really in chaos right now because they can't reach their officials in New York. All of their phone lines are down, and now you've got all of their special experts on this stuck in Monterey, California, trying to get a military flight back because there are no longer commercial flights. So they are seriously out of pocket, and there is a real breakdown of the FBI anti-terror coordination team, which is, of course, the principal team that would lead any effort.
I actually found myself in Montana with 50 state emergency managers, the director of FEMA, his top staff at the National Emergency Management Association conference. Number of emergency managers from New York State, from Pennsylvania, from Virginia, Maryland, the district, most in New England, made the flight on a C-130 last night. It was one of the only flights across the country, a military aircraft.
Now, before I get into the other war games, what I want to demonstrate there is that a lot of people on the ground that would have been gathering evidence, especially in the FBI, that we already know, again, with Robert Wright talking about Yasin Qadi, had already been stifled, weren't even there on the scene when this happened. That's a big problem.
They were sent on.
Hold on.
Yeah.
The larger point is this: like, what I think is very interesting is that this was a military exercise. With all the military exercises, my God, how many do we know? And these sort of groups. So NORAD's responsibility, actually, for 50 years, remember, was to have their instrumentation pointed outward because of an attack at the United States. And I have to say, and I remember this very well, I never met one person in the time that this happened. And my friend's brother was killed in 9/11. So I remember feeling, I really kind of it was a very emotional, tough time. But I remember, I remember thinking
you lost
there was no
brother
one I knew.
9/11?
No, my friend lost his brother. But there was no one said, oh, I saw this coming. And it is their job. It is intelligence job to see it coming. But even if you are planning this, we had 14 jets that were actually nationwide, the contiguous 48 states, the United States, ready to intercept a plane like that. 14 jets is not enough.
Well, again, Bryan, as we're going to get into the more drills, I just wanted to point that out. You had a lot of these doing war games on either side of the coast with Russia at the time simultaneously. That all these things were happening, and anybody can say, well, war games happen all the time. Not on this level. Like, if you look at how many of these things were...
Jason, doesn't that raise... I'm sorry, Sam. But doesn't that raise to you sort of like, don't you say to yourself, if they're actually practicing for this, like, and NORAD, we know that their instrumentation was pointed outward. Is it far-fetched to assume that they just missed it? And if they didn't, and if this was... So if these war games were actually planned by a group, why would they do that? All
right, if you've got...
And I want to say something.
Sure. If you've got actual hijackings going on, which I believe happened, and you're going to find out, again, not only were there weapons on these planes, and they found weapons on other planes, but they also had baggage that was almost identical to what they found didn't get onto Atta's plane. And remember, we had previously talked about James Woods and these guys casing, getting on planes with no luggage. You know, he said they had no luggage. And again, for a pilot, you know, this guy, and then having the FBI actually say, yes, we did look into that. Now, the story of we never thought about multiple hijackings in the United States. We did. We never thought about the Pentagon. We did. We never thought about the World Trade Center. We did. We did get warnings. And then in Cheyenne Mountain, when you have all these different hijackings going on, these guys are in underground bases. The conventional wisdom is as soon as the first plane hit the building, they stopped. They took all these inputs off. That is not the case. I listened to the NORAD tapes. I'm going to play you the excerpt, but it wasn't until 23 minutes afterwards that NORAD, which is up in New York, finally gets Cheyenne Mountain on the line and tells them to discontinue their inputs, which are these false hijackings. All right?
Okay.
So
all right.
Yes.
So hold on.
Go.
Hold on. So I want to do something that I do with Bryan on the show, which is let's go to Fantasyland for 2 seconds. This magical place where we all go. We're like scenarios that Bryan doesn't want to accept. For this in Fantasyland is real. We're going to accept in Fantasyland this is real. And let's say these powerful people know this thing's going to go down. What is the best way? And we're going to assume in Fantasyland that the people running the government are evil people. Let's just say this, or people who have alternative motives. We're going to play this little game, Fantasyland. Would it be a good idea if you were a leader in Fantasyland and you want something to go down to take everybody whose job it is to deal with that and scatter them all over the place, doing scenarios where they are not able to be on the ground, effective to stop what's going on? You see that in every kind of movie, right? Hold on. You see that in every movie, right? We're going to rob a bank. So what do? We get security worried about this over here and doing something over here. Why are guys go over here? So why are those people that deal with rescuing and stuff, why are they in Montebello magically on a mission when this thing goes down? Why are all these different – why is there NORAD running all these different war game scenarios?
That's what NORAD does.
Not all the time, Brian.
Sam, you don't know what NORAD.
No, Brian. First of all, don't insult me like that, because I know exactly what I do. This is what I do.
You and I don't know what NORAD does.
Brian,
war games happen all the time.
Yeah, Brian. But what we're talking about is a consistent fucking behavior on a day that takes away the people whose job it is to stop this and keeps them fucking occupied with something else.
It sounds to me like we got embarrassed. It sounds to me like NORAD and the intelligence community.
To conspiracy
I mean, again, Brian.
It sounds like elements of the intelligence community, the FBI, NORAD, got really embarrassed, and this was their Pearl Harbor. I mean, the idea that all of these people knew what was going on, Jason.
Well,
Brian,
I don't think they did.
Brian, and then we'll stop, Jason. Yep. Stop. Brian, I need you to answer me this, because it infuriates me sometimes when you do this.
Go ahead.
If you were doing this with intention,
right,
of fucking allowing a fucking terrorist attack to happen, and we are in fantasy land,
right,
does it make sense to keep all of these people preoccupied elsewhere in fantasy land?
It makes sense. I reject the notion.
No, we're in fantasy land, Brian. We're in fantasy land.
I reject the notion that you're saying all these people were kept occupied. And I would like to ask you.
Sure.
Yes.
What kind, and Jason as well.
Yeah.
How many people would this take?
So
how many people, guys? How much coordination do we have between, if you guys believe this is an inside job by the FBI, by NORAD, by the CIA, how many people are talking to each other and planning
all right,
this
so let's stop
by getting away with it?
All right, let me say this, because let's bring in each agencies. Obviously, you would think that the vast majority of those people who are running this drill over there are your good, down to earth, on the ground agents, right? So you have, for instance, in the film, I show you a guy named Robert Wright, and you can watch a film called Press for Truth, which was kind of the story of the Jersey girls who wanted the information, especially about Al-Madar, who was living with and renting from the informant, Yasin Qadi, all this money. Larry Klayman was his lawyer, and he says that he contacted Michael Chertoff, who was then the deputy director of the FBI. Robert Mueller was the new director, I think in the first couple weeks, right before 9/11. Chertoff specifically told Klayman said, hey, we've got all the information. We want to come to you with this. Chertoff says, we don't need any conspiracy theories right now. And anybody can watch that on C-SPAN. Now, Chertoff.
Do you think, though, Jason,
Sure.
let me ask you something. Do you think George W. was part of this?
Not even a little bit. Not even kind of.
Do you have in your mind the people that did? I still believe this was an Islamic terrorist attack.
Sure.
Say, but do you believe that there were? Do you know? What are your suspicions, and where do they point to in the Bush administration, in the CIA? Do you know players here? Or
I would want to obviously question anybody that met with Ahmed, especially Tenet, who was the head of the CIA at the time, Goss, who would later become the head of the CIA. I think Bob Graham would at least be open about some of the things in that meeting because he was with Goss. You start there, right? That's one thing.
Right.
I think obviously Dick Cheney and George Bush should not have been able to testify together, not under oath, with no record of what they said. Dick Cheney in particular is somebody you look at because he did have that authority, that continuity of government power that day. Now, I would also...
Jason, is it possible, though, before you go on, is it possible that the people like Porter Goss and the people in the CIA, like that, they definitely met with the head of the ISI.
Yeah.
We know this.
Sure.
We know that they've had a long history of cooperation and antagonism and all those things with various intelligence agencies. Isn't it possible, though, that if some of these guys knew that the ISI was implicated in this, everybody's trying to save their job, and everybody's like, nothing to see here.
Well, all right. So listen, even then, that's pretty terrible if we're going to go with the incompetence theory. Because, all right, we're told 19 guys and then maybe Moussaoui, right? That's the big trial that we all hear about. Well, you know, if I can continue to show you this, not only on the drill part, but the fact that they had weapons on the planes, those are accomplices. I want to know how they got there, especially because the narrative was they got through security and now we need body scanners. All right.
Well, I heard, Jason, I heard that it's really hard to get somebody to fly a plane into a building. It's a very rare individual, right? And I heard that what they think was that most of the hijackers thought they were hijacking a plane, not using it as a missile.
Yeah.
And it was probably one or two guys who knew what was really going to happen. So that would make sense, right? Because getting 19 people to be suicidal, really fucking a stretch.
Again, even that mentality, I often agree. I don't think that, all 19, again, I don't think all 19 of these guys knew exactly what was going on. Again, you have these little cliques of 4 or 5. You see the ones that are training with each other or living with each other on bases or in the same vicinity. But again, how do the weapons get on the planes? That's a huge question. If there are
you mean
weapons,
the box cutters?
What's that?
No.
You mean the box cutters?
No, I'm telling. All right, let me get to it. You know what? We'll just skip ahead. Hold on one second.
Because I think a Glock.
Jason,
I think Glocks at that time, because we didn't have scanners.
Also, I'd love to.
You could actually get on because they were mostly plastic. I remember that.
Okay, you're crazy.
So, here, I just want to point out that this is them confirming. This is Richard Myers.
One of these guys whose job was stop everything gets promoted. It's such a weird ass thing.
Well, everybody got promoted, right? Like Chertoff became the head of Homeland Security. He was the guy. All right, let me just get. I want to play this Cheyenne Mountain thing because I think it's important, Brian, that you really do understand that these war games. And the other thing is, we have E-4Bs. I'd like to know who were on the E-4Bs that they're still telling us weren't in the air on 9/11, that are clearly in the air on 9/11 at the World Trade Center and at the Pentagon. That's problematic for me. Those are mobile command.
What are those? I'm sorry. What are those, Jason?
Doomsday.
So those are doomsday planes. They're the mobile command centers because these drills that were going on were also Armageddon exercises.
Yeah.
They were nuclear drills going off. So you had
nothing new there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But kind of special because if you have these 5 command centers, you have very high level people on these planes. They're the ones that are actually going to be making decisions. When they do a drill with these people, it is the commanders. So,
but Jason, I've flown from LaGuardia and from JFK 1 million times.
Yeah.
Getting from JFK or LaGuardia in a 747 to the World Trade Center is literally 3 minutes.
I'm not saying that that's. Yeah. Well, their path is a little bit different because I think it was Boston. It was the Boston flight that went into the World Trade Center. But I understand it's not very long of a flight. That's not what I'm arguing. Again, I'm arguing that
number of emergency. One of the only.
All these
Vigilant Guardian and Vigilant Warrior were exercises involving hijacked aircraft that would go in and out of radar. These would appear real to those involved.
We fought many phantoms that day. We got many aircraft calls inbound that morning that turned out to be phantoms.
During that time frame, we had multiple aircraft called hijacked all over the country.
These exercises would not cease until after United 93 was brought down and the attacks were over.
Open line. Surveillance, Sergeant Richmond.
Sergeant Richmond, Sergeant Light from Cheyenne Mountain Test Control. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Okay, I need you to terminate all exercise inputs coming to Cheyenne Mountain at this time.
Copy.
And stay on loop until I verify that or the connectivity is disconnected on the exercise side only. Okay, no, do not do any more inputs on the exercise side and stand by.
I got Cheyenne Mountain on the line. Terminating all exercise inputs.
Over, in case you didn't know, that exercise.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, more hijackings were thought to be taking place.
These are not exercises. These are real planes.
What's that?
Right. Isn't it possible that what they were saying there is this is not a fucking dress rehearsal. This is not a drill.
Well, again, they're looking. Shit. This is it right here. They're looking at all these hijackings. And they need them getting taken off. So watch.
Right.
Yeah.
Video game. It's actually people's lives that you're trying to keep from running into each other.
Other planes were thought to have been hijacked and almost shot down. An aircraft inbound to Whitehorse from Alaskan airspace was a hijacked aircraft, and that the military flight crews were aware of this, and they were en route to intercept the aircraft.
Some of these war games and their details remain classified to this day. So is it any wonder that Donald Rumsfeld gave these warnings to military personnel the day after the attacks?
Finally, I'd like to say a word or two to the men and women in the defense establishment, most of whom deal with classified information. When people deal with intelligence information and make it available to people who are not cleared for that classified information, the effect is to reduce the chances that the United States government has to track down and deal with the people who have perpetrated the attacks on the United States and killed so many Americans.
Later in the day, weapons are found planted on several other planes.
Wow.
Yeah. A U.S. official says of the hijackings, these look like inside jobs. Sources tell Time that U.S. officials are investigating whether the hijackers had accomplices deep inside the airport's secure areas.
Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here. That was round 2 with Bryan, Callen, and Sam Tripoli over at the Conspiracy Social Club. Now, the conversation goes on for more than an hour and 15 minutes. That's just 25 minutes of it. It is with a premium subscription, but the best part is if you decide to subscribe to Jason Burmis, if you decide to subscribe to Sam Tripoli or the Conspiracy Social Club or any of your favorite creators, guess what? You get all the premium content for free, and it's a place where, guess what? They're also not censoring me. Imagine that. So please consider getting that premium membership and enjoy this long excerpt. Thanks again. Love y'all. And see ya on the flip side. Over at Premium,